Whichever field you are in tech, you need this basic knowledge I'm about to explain, most especially the solution architect and the cloud engineer. So what we want to discuss today is what we call the IP address, which comprises of the public IP, the private IP, and the elastic IP address. So we want to talk about these three things in this video. So let me start with the IP address. Now you know that in networking, we have two basic sort of IP address. We have IPv4 and we also have IPv6. And you know that IPv4 was the first set of IP address that was created the moment internet was established. And when they created IPv4, it has about 4.3 billion IP that can cover the whole world as at then. Then by the time they subtracted the multicasts and some other reserved IP address, so IPv4 can only satisfy 3.7 billion users in the world. And as you know that nowadays the population of the world has increased from that 3.7 billion to what, to 8 billion. Right now we are about 8 billion in the whole world. So that now led to what, to the invention of IPv6. So IPv4 has just 4 octet number that are separated by what, by dots. So and each of these octet number, they are between 0 to 255. 0 to 255. So it means you can have 192.168.25.255, or you can have 72.44.108.56. So all those 4 octet numbers, they represent what? They represent IPv4. Now, because IPv4 cannot satisfy the whole world, they actually invented IPv6. So IPv6 now have what we call 8 octet structure, and each of these octets are separated with colon. So as a result of that, IPv6 cannot satisfy the whole world because of its what, multiplicity. So let's leave that aside, because that is not the major thing for this lecture. The major thing for this lecture is we want to actually know between public IP, private IP, and what, an elastic IP. So now, what we call private IP, let me start with private IP. Private IP, they are those IP address that are used internally. They are IP address that are not exposed to the world, to the internet. In the cloud environment, private IP address, they are usually found inside the what, the VPC, which is virtual private cloud. So they are the IP address that those internal services that are within our VPC use to communicate with one another. For example, in a big website like Amazon, the server of Amazon and the database of Amazon, they are inside the VPC. So what the server and the database use to communicate with one another is what we call the private IP, because they are not exposed to the internet. So anytime customer make inquiry, or customer want to order something, or customer want to buy something from Amazon website, so the server communicates privately using private IP to what, to the database, and get the result from the database and send it to the what, to the particular user that need it at that moment. So that is the essence of private IP address. So private IP, they are not routable to the what, to the internet. They work internally within what, within the virtual private cloud. So how will you know a private IP from a public IP? Can you actually identify a private IP? So let me give you a logic that will make you to identify a private IP anytime you see it. You see, any IP within this range, 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255, any IP within that range is what is a private IP. Then the second section is, if you now see an IP within this range, 172.16.0.0 to 172.31.255.255, any IP within that range is also a private IP. Then the last set is when you see an IP within this range, 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. Any IP within this range is also a private IP. So these three sets of IP I just mentioned, these three sets that I just mentioned, they are what? They are private IP address. So it simply means that all IP within 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.2, so almost all of them in that 10, any IP that starts with 10, just know is what? Is a private IP, not a public IP. Then if you see an IP that starts with 172.15.0.0, that is what? That is public, not private. Don't forget, private IP start with 172.16.0, then to 172.31.255.255. So any IP that is outside of this box, it is public, not private. Then for the third one, 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. Any IP within this range is private. But if you now see an IP that starts with 192.169. whatever, that is what? That is a public IP, not a private IP. I hope it is clear. So that is how to differentiate between a private IP and a public IP. So that's that about private IP. And what you need to know is that private IP don't change. They are mostly static. They don't usually change. Whether you start your server or you hibernate your server or you restart your server, private IP remain the same. So let's talk about the second one, which is what? Which is the public IP. The public IP, they are those IP that are routable to the internet. They are those IP address that are used to communicate on the internet. So anytime you visit a website, anytime you visit the internet, the IP address that you use at that time is what? Is a public IP address. And that IP address changes time to time. So as a solution architect, you only assign public IP address to those devices or those servers that you actually want to be exposed to the internet. So any server that you know that you are not going to be exposed or has nothing to do with internet, you dare not expose it to the internet. Public IP changes time to time. So it changes time to time once it is assigned to any service that you are using at that moment. You may decide to expose your EC2 to public, or you may decide to put it in VPC. And also, you need to understand that anything that is inside VPC can also have access to internet. When you use NAT gateway, you can actually allow whatever is inside the VPC to have access to the internet as well. Talk about the public IP. Now let's talk about the elastic IP. Now the elastic IP is used to reserve an IP address for your EC2 instance or any service you're using at that moment. So if you want to reserve a public IP such that when you start or when you stop or when you hibernate your EC2 instance, you can actually use elastic IP. So all what you just need is to request for an elastic IP, and Amazon is going to give you a permanent public IP address that is going to be permanent to your account or to that particular service that you are using at that moment. And whenever you start or you stop or you hibernate your EC2 server or whatever service you are using on your account, the IP will remain the same and remain like that until until you remove it. So that is that about elastic IP. So to round up, public IP, they are those IP address that is accessible on the internet. And whenever you assign public IP to any service you are using on AWS, just know that that service will be exposed to the internet. That's number one. Number two there is that no two devices have the same public IP address. That's number two. Number three is that public IP can be geolocated, meaning that you can route it to different locations because it is what? It is public and it is exposed to the what? To the internet. So that's that about public IP. The private IP. Private IP, they are only accessible within what? Within the private cloud environment. So within your VPC, that's where we can have private IP address. Number two is that anytime you are assigning private IP address to your services in VPC, you must make sure that each of those services, they have their own unique private IP address in order to avoid confusion. But have it in mind that two different companies can have almost the same private IP address. Then number three is that the machine or the services you are using that is in VPC, you can actually connect them to what? To the internet by using what? By using internet gateway. Last thing is that you should know that only specific IP address can be used as private IP. Not all IP can be used as private IP.